There you are. Good afternoon, and welcome to another one in the series of our Risk Crew seminars. I'm Nick Roberts from Risk Crew, broadcasting live from our office here in London, just south of Tower Bridge. So you're all very welcome. So yes, our seminar this afternoon is going to focus on obviously security, but the security of people. So people are, of course, our biggest asset, but unfortunately, they're also our biggest threat. So that's the topic of this afternoon's webinar. So as I say, you're all very welcome. We want to try and make this quite interactive. So if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please type them into the chat box, and I'll try and weave them in at an appropriate spot. So I can see from the guest list here, I'd say there's about 50% of you that we call friends and family. So good to see you guys, and the other half we haven't worked with before. So just to give you a quick overview of who we are, well, we're Risk Crew, and we're passionate about information security. We have three core services. First is security testing. We have a very talented team of testing engineers, ethical hackers, and a full portfolio of penetration and security testing services. Second core service is consultancy, governance, risk, and compliance consultancy. So we help companies comply and certify to ISO 27001, PCI DSS, obviously data protection, and all flavors of information security risk management. Third core service is security, education, and awareness. Our managing director, Richard, is absolutely passionate about education. So we have a full portfolio of information security and related training materials, from e-learning to classroom and presentations, full portfolio. So that in the shell of a nut is who we are. So there's going to be two presenters this afternoon. Myself, so as I say, I'm Nick Roberts. I'm the commercial director here and also the key account manager at Risk Crew. I've been in the business, crikey, 15 years. I've been with Risk Crew for 5 years. My role here is mainly in an advisory capacity with our clients. If I'm an advisor, then my colleague Andy here is most certainly a doer. Andy, he's been with Risk Crew for a little over 3 years. He's one of our principal information security consultants. Again, 15 years of experience. I think I look a bit younger than him though. So Andy will be joining us soon. What's interesting is over the last 3 or 4 months since lockdown, Andy's been working very closely with three of our larger clients, helping them move from before COVID to this new working from home environment. So he's got a lot of experience and some very interesting insights into some of the issues that we'll be discussing this afternoon. So if you can contain your excitement, these are the topics we're going to be covering this afternoon. I'll take a quick look at the current and significant threats to staff and perhaps how they've changed during COVID, and then I'll hand over to Andy, and he's gonna really start to look and talk about how we can start to mitigate and reduce some of these new or changing threats. And then at the end of the session, we'll certainly have some time for Q&A. So keep your questions coming in. So yeah, that's what we're going to be covering in the next 30 minutes or so. So let's start with I don't know whether this is a fun fact, but it is certainly just an unbelievable fact, and it just really brings home the massive change to the working environment. So this is a figure that was published just under 2 weeks ago by the ONS. Nearly 50% of adults in employment are now working from home. That's up from about 5 or 6% before COVID. That is just when I saw that figure, it's just amazing. Half the working population are now working from home. So the working environment's completely and utterly changed, and obviously brought with it some really changing and increasing risks. So these are some of the current threats to staff. I'm sure I'm not teaching any of you how to suck eggs here, but obviously everyone, every office worker is now outside of the castle walls. They're outside of the mothership. They're working from home. That in itself brings some risks. They're outside of the corporate network. If they're not connecting in via VPN, they're outside of the corporate network. They're outside of firewalls, intrusion detection. So all of that technical security that applied to their IT systems when they were at their desk may not apply when they're working from home. And another very interesting thing to consider is we talk about firewalls. The human firewall, your receptionist is a human firewall, stopping calls getting through to people that shouldn't go there. So now staff are receiving calls on their mobile or their home phones. There isn't that firewall of a receptionist to stop unwanted calls. So that is another big risk. More on that a little bit later. So people at home, they're out of sight, they're out of mind, and that's both from the perspective of the employee. They may feel out of sight and out of mind of their employer, but also the other way round. You have got nowhere near as much visibility of your staff as you had when they were working in the same office as you. What are the consequences there? Well, let's look at firstly unconscious incompetence. Members of staff trying to use their initiative, but maybe doing something wrong. We've seen a lot of it. We had a client recently where a member of marketing, new employee, member of marketing, was asked to send a mailer, a COVID update mailer to their client list. And this was all financial directors of their clients, about 300 of them. And this employee put these 300 email addresses in CC instead of BCC. So everybody saw everybody else's email address. Unconscious incompetence, but that's maybe down to the employer for not doing the appropriate training. So things like this are happening, whereas before that employee might have said, Bob, before I send this, can you just take a look that I've queued this email up correctly? And you may not be doing that when you're working from home. So it's this out of sight, out of mind thing. Also malicious intent, and this is a malicious intent on the part of cyber criminals trying to socially engineer employees, but possibly your worst nightmare if you have a rogue employee with malicious intent. Doesn't happen often, but it's a huge issue. And there can be a lack of accountability in that scenario of a malicious employee, or in the event of a ransomware attack. If you're not capturing logs and records of people's machines, then you've got no way of producing evidence or doing proper forensics in the event that a big breach happens. So another thing I know for some clients is how to consider how we're capturing logs and records and the accountability of our users using their own or company equipment at home and out of the working environment. So everything's chaos. It's calmed down a little bit now. So, you know, the definition of chaos is a big change with big impact that we weren't expecting. And you couldn't describe chaos any better than what happened with COVID-19. And chaos absolutely breeds opportunity for cyber criminals. They thrive in chaos. So this is obviously what we're seeing. So just another fun fact, you see on the right, 76% of businesses reported that their most persistent threat comes from their staff. And that's not necessarily malicious, it's more unconscious incompetence. another stat, 72% of incidents are due to internal and accidental breaches by members of staff, perhaps using their initiative incorrectly. So these are all threats that were always there, but have changed significantly or grown due to the change in working environment. So the attack vectors, the types of scams, the inventiveness that criminals are using have increased exponentially since we all went into lockdown at the end of March. There's another stat on the right-hand side there. Phishing emails have increased by nearly 700% since the end of February. And that's scary. And some of these phishing attacks, I've seen ones come to me that you've got a document to download from SharePoint. Please put in your 365 username and password. Some of these look really realistic. And people at home, are they in the right frame of mind, sitting in their gym jams, opening their emails in the morning with a slice of toast? Are they in that right frame of mind not to follow some of these links and these requests? We see some management processes getting out of control, like incident management, staff that they know how to recognise, and more importantly, that they know how and who to report incidents or near misses to. We see a lot of IT departments working completely from home. So this is why change management processes are so important now, that any changes that IT are making, that those changes are reviewed and formally authorised before they're acted upon. So some of these management controls are getting away from us a little bit. And as I've said, phishing scams going through the roof. Some of them are real clever and believable. So it's never been more dangerous to click on a link, to download an attachment, to fill in a form. And as I say, and I'm just about to give you a quick play a quick sound file. Telephone pretexting. The receptionist is gone. That firewall is gone. So there's another layer of security that's gone. Now this is something that happened to me at this desk on my phone just over 2 weeks ago. I was sitting here in the office and one of the extension phones rang, and that's unusual because we only publish a main switchboard number. But this phone, this was an extension number that rang. So I answered the phone, and I got an automated message saying it was along the lines of, your internet service is going to be closed down in 4 hours due to vulnerabilities found on your router. Please press 1 to speak to our technical department. So obviously I smelled a bit of a rat and had the good sense to switch on the recording app on my mobile phone and put the desk phone on speaker. So I'm just about to play you what happened. So I hope you can hear this. So I've pushed 2, I've gone to the technical support, and this is what happened. Nothing.
Call off your internet line, sir. So are you facing any sort of problem regarding your internet? Like, is it running slow? Your router is not performing well? Any sort of things like that?
No, it's been absolutely fine.
All right, that's no problem. So good to hear that, indeed. But as I said, that this is just a free routine health checkup call, okay? So can you please go ahead?
So very polite there. Good to hear you had no problems with your router. This is a free routine health check.
And switch on your computer or laptop if you have, so that I could show you what errors we have been receiving from your router and what corruptions are there. So that.
So here's the rub. She's asking me to turn on my PC or computer so she can show me the faults that my router's shown. Hold on.
And we could help you out to remove them. All right.
So are you're calling from Virgin Internet, are you?
So I am calling you from the Virgin Talk Open Reach, the mother server of all the collaboration internet companies.
She's calling from the mother server of all internet collaboration companies. Fantastic.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can't
Is
actually.
your computer on right now?
No, I'm not in the same room as my computer.
All right. So can I hold the line? You just take the phone and go to there?
Yeah, I can ask you to hold the line, and I'll go and get it. I don't know whether my son has taken it. Could you hold on and I'll just go and check?
No issues, darling.
No issues, darling. Very polite, and she's happy to hold the line while I go and get my my laptop or PC. So let me just wind forward a bit. There we go.
We could be calling you back again, sir.
Okay.
Will that be possible for you?
I tell you what I'll do is when I've got the computer back, I will I'll give Virgin a call. I've got their customer service number. They'll be able to help me, I'm sure. Is there anything I need to tell them? Nah. She hung up. So that's, yeah. So she asked if she could call me back, and I said no. Why don't I call you back? Give me your number. She refused to give me her number, and then when I said I'd call Virgin, she hung up. So yeah, this is just something that happened to me just over 2 weeks ago, sitting at my desk. Now, how realistic is that? It's, you know, obviously I was kicking myself not to let it go to the next stage, where she was obviously going to ask me to log on to a website. Then she was going to take over, ask me to share my screen, and either sell me a piece of antivirus software for $5, therefore taking my card details, or she was going to download a remote access Trojan to monitor my email addresses or whatever, or both. So these really clever, really believable things are happening every single day. So this is why it's so important to understand these threats and try and do something about it. So let's move on. Okay, this is where I think my colleague Andy Whitaker is going to join us. Andy, are you there?
Hello, Nick. Yes.
Yeah. Sandy. Good afternoon. I see you've not got your hair cut yet.
I'm
looking a bit like.
For it.
Listen, Andy, I've obviously been talking about a lot of scary stuff, a lot of threats that, yeah, have always been there, but have changed and increased during these COVID times. Hopefully, you're going to be able to give us some steer on what we can try and do to reduce these threats and risks.
Well, yep, that's hopefully at the end of this, we're going to be in a far better position than we were at the beginning.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Over to you.
Okay. So the 3 essential steps that we're looking at here, and the first one is to identify and understand the new attack vectors through your staff, given the current working from home environment. Now, a lot of these will be shared and they'll be common to other environments, and it's very good to look at things like LinkedIn forums. There are other forums, just to get a general feel for what other people are worrying about. But there will be some particular attack vectors which is very specific to your own company. They'll be unique to the way you work. You need to understand those. Now, step 2 is to message these risks to your staff. Help them understand what these risks are and instruct them on the appropriate countermeasures that you can use. Now, you have to be fairly simplistic in the language you use, because all the staff have to understand it, and not all of them will be steeped in information security. Now, step 3, this gets missed quite often, but you have to test and measure their behavior. There are a few reasons why you need to do that, but it's absolutely essential. Now, key points to include in the security awareness training is that working from home doesn't exempt them from good security. In fact, it demands it. All the current company policies still apply. It's just that they're not working in the office, they are working from home. All the policies are still valid. Now, this is very critical, this one. One device, one purpose. If at all possible, don't share the PC or the laptop or whatever device you use for your work with other family members or household, if it's shared household. Try and keep that laptop purely for one purpose, for work. Security updates are imperative. They are super urgent at this point because there are a lot of people trying to take advantage of what's known as zero-day attacks. This is where particular vulnerabilities have been identified, and the attacks to take advantage of them are just there. They're ready to go with it before people have had a chance to patch. One more, which occasionally gets forgotten: don't throw hard copies of work-related material into the rubbish. It should be shredded. Everybody's used to shredding things in the office. You need to have a shredder at home, or you need to have some way to securely destroy it.
Andy, sorry to interrupt. That's a good point about hard copy paper.
Yep.
You've been working with a number of companies during lockdown. What advice have they been giving, or how have they been communicating advice on hard copy, particularly to users that don't have a shredder at home?
Yeah, the general message coming along is that if at all possible, don't print anything at all.
Sure.
Printing it is adding to your burden of, there's more things you've got to look out for, it's more things you've got to worry about and things. So try and go for the paperless office. Don't print anything out. That's
the paperless home office.
Sorry?
The paperless home office.
The paperless home office. It's much cheaper that way. I mean, ink is very expensive, and paper, it's far better uses for it than printing off work-related information, which will only be relevant for a short period of time, then you have to dispose of it.
Sure. Thanks, Andy.
Moving on. So the key points for your staff is to be hyper vigilant for phishing attacks. And these, as Nick said in one of the earlier slides, the percentage increase in these is astronomical. You must treat all links in emails as suspects, especially from emails where you weren't expecting links, which originate outside of the organization. Another one that gets missed quite a lot is verify callers. We have an innate ability to trust somebody who we've never met, never heard from, simply because they've rang us up. It's always in your interest to verify the caller is who they say they are, and if they're saying they work for somebody, see if you can verify who they're working for. Now, attachments from unknown senders should be treated like a deadly virus, and COVID-19 comes in there, because if you've got something, you weren't expecting it from somebody you don't know, treat it as though you've got the virus. Social distancing comes into play here. Don't go near it. Don't click on the links. Inform security. Information security team are far better at analysing any particular messages to see if there are any hidden Trojans in there or malicious code.
Sorry, Andy, me again. Would you? So I played that example of a call that I received, and I've received many social engineering emails. Would you advocate a company shows those examples that their staff may have received to the whole company, just to demonstrate this is not happening just to other people, this is happening to us. These are the emails that we've received that are fraudulent. Is that a good way of raising awareness?
It is real world examples, and especially if they're very sort of relevant to the company that we've received these. So this is what our users need to be on the lookout. They usually go in waves, these attacks. So you'll get one particular phishing email, and a few days later, a colleague will receive more or less the same phishing email with a few slight amendments. But because of an awareness program where you're detailing these type of attacks and giving some real world examples, people know what to look for. They'll recognize them. And that's the crux. That's the important point. Being able to recognize a phishing attack for what it is.
Sure. Thanks, Andy, as you were.
Thank you. So some more key points. Good home security practices. Now, Wi-Fi Security 101 is a blog post, and it's very good. It's got some really good examples in there. I mean, there are other blog posts, but this one in particular has a lot of good information in there. Some of it is a bit technical, so it needs to be broken down into sort of bite-sized chunks for the users. But it covers things like router configurations, passwords, and encryption. And router configurations is a good point, because we're all now dependent on our router configuration of our router at home. It's not a corporate entity. It hasn't got the corporate build on it. So it needs to be as secure as we can make it. Now, the second point, backup, backup, backup. That is fundamentally important at the moment, because hot on the heels of a phishing attack is ransomware attacks. These are the attacks that will encrypt all your data and ask for a donation of Bitcoins or various other things to get them back. It's not generally thought to be in your interest to pay these ransoms, but your only recourse there is to revert to your backups. So you need good, solid backups. Now, what constitutes a security incident in a working from home environment is anything strange or unexpected. Don't expect your users to be able to identify what is and is not an incident. If they've got any doubt, if there's anything strange, anything untoward that they weren't expecting, don't get them to investigate it. Get them to notify at the earliest opportunity the IT help desk or the information security team, so people with better skill sets can investigate it to see whether or not it is an incident. It's far better to have a red herring for the user to investigate themselves, click on links, and suddenly you're infected with some malware.
And Andy, sorry, this is the challenge, isn't it? Everything you said about recognizing, reporting incidents, even if it's a near miss or it's a suspected, that's the challenge. How are companies communicating how and who to report it to their users?
It's a very good thing. Generally, intranets are becoming the way for storing all the information and contact details, but by and large, staff don't generally browse internets very often. So it's basically on briefings, it's on team meetings, it's on email alerts, things like that. Other ways, more proactive approaches, one-to-one approaches and team meetings to get the message across. Certainly letting them know where they can find all of the information they need, the policies, any particular forms or contact numbers, that's good. But that information of where things are has to be delivered more or less in person to make it stick.
And keep repeating that message frequently.
Absolutely, you've got to hammer it home. They need to be clear on who they should report things to and how to report it, and it should be as simple as possible for the users. The users should be encouraged more and more that if they've got a question, any question, ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. Somebody asking a stupid question is probably saving themselves from doing something stupid, which everybody will regret. So get them to ask questions.
No, good point, Andy.
If you want to quantify the working from home cyber risks to your staff, and this is the danger that any of the things we've talked about could impact them and your staff will not respond how you would expect them to respond, the only way you can quantify that is to test them. You have to be able to test them to give yourself an indication of whether or not your security awareness campaigns, all the training, everything else you're investing in for your staff is working. Now, we're going to look at sort of 3 fairly easy social engineering attacks, and these have been in the news, so everybody should be aware of it. We've got phishing, we've got pretexting, and then a subset of phishing, whaling. So we'll cover some of these and just to give you an indication of what staff are going to face. Now, these are fairly typical examples of phishing attacks. A lot of these produced by scripts, and the errors and things. There are various things you can look at to identify phishing attacks. And the only way you can get your staff to be able to identify themselves is through training, through awareness campaigns, briefings. Using real-world examples that you've received within the company is ideal, because it's very likely they'll get them at some point. So use real-world examples, but keep pushing it and get them to treat any unexpected emails as suspect. Now, here's a good fun fact for you. Less than 30% of companies actually phish their own employees. Now, we could turn that around a little bit, because what it means is that 70% of companies have got no real indication that the security awareness programs, the training, all the other things they deliver to the staff are actually working. They just don't know. Now, this is a pretexting email that came in. It's got some very good, fairly typical ones. And pretexting, they often pose to somebody who's known to the particular victim, to get a thing of familiarity there, to try and show them that it's a valid request. But it's all about collecting specific bits of information which be used in a further attack somewhat down the line. Users need to be able to identify this and take appropriate action. Then we have whaling. Whaling is a very good targeted subset of phishing. And general aim is to try and get the poor victim to either pay a bogus invoice or to transfer some money into an account for some other commercial reason, fictitious. They nearly always have some knowledge of the internal workings of the company and of the people there, so that the requests can seem genuine. They're very hard. They're harder than phishing to identify, because it always involves in a slight change to existing payment processes. This is what the staff need to be aware of. Anything which is slightly out of the ordinary, flag it as a concern. Flag it to management and ask for their response. They have to be able to do that without any fears of being criticised or anything. But anything that's slightly untoward and out of the ordinary, raise it to management or to the information security team for further guidance. And one of the things for gauging how your training and awareness programs are successful is having a KPI. And these are what I consider to be essential KPIs. Looking at the number of staff that click on unknown links. And that's essentially, that really has to be 0 or as close to 0 as humanly possible. So we need a method of tracking that and judging it, which is where the testing comes in. Staff that provide credentials, their usernames, their passwords. Staff which will upload unauthorized applications. Will share their credentials with other staff members. The number of staff that are attempting to escalate user privileges. And also the number of staff that are reporting incidents. And we should have a wide selection of staff reporting incidents. These are unknown events that they're not sure of. It should not only be limited to 2 or 3 individuals. So these are what I consider to be essential KPIs that are worth measuring to give you some indication of how effective your awareness and your training programs are.
Andy, sorry, got a question from the audience here. Somebody's asked, how often should we conduct these simulated phishing attacks on our staff?
Right, it's a very, very good question, and it all comes down to the results you get on the very first test. If you conduct a test and you've got very few negative results in there, the awareness programs clearly working, the training programs there, the bulletins, everything is there. All the staff, well, the majority of the staff are taking it on board and can deal with the situations. So your next test could be in several months' time, 6 months' time, depending on the criticality of the nature of the business. But if you've got a very, very poor result where your staff, and we've had the indication where 70% of the staff actually fell for a phishing attack.
Yeah.
You need to carry out some emergency staff awareness, some staff training, let it sink in, and then test them again very quickly after the training, because you need to be able to understand and have some sense that the training is working and they are taking on board. Because if they aren't, you need to change the training, you need to change your awareness programs, you need to do something different to make the information stick, to get the staff to behave as you want them to behave.
Yeah, so I guess this is why the KPIs are so important. They're measuring the effectiveness of your awareness. So you do a phishing attack, you get a high number of people that have fallen for it, lots of training, so that's a KPI. Then you do the training, and then another phishing attack gives you another KPI, so a before and after measure of the effectiveness of the training.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And only when you've got some confidence in that the training and the awareness programs you're delivering is equipping your staff with the skill sets they need to deal with this, that could you start to reduce the testing and moving it out to longer periods before you do the retests.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Andy, and thanks for the question.
So in summary, you've got to equip your staff to deal with the threats they're likely to face in their working from home environment. And these threats are going to be, to some extent, similar to the office, but there are some new ones which are unique to the home environment. Training and security awareness are essential for giving them the skill sets they need. Testing in your staff is an appropriate way to gauge the effectiveness of the staff after they've had the training, after they've had the awareness programs, and all of the jolly reminders from the security team about what they should be doing and what they should be looking out for. It's an ongoing process. Phishing attacks evolve, other attacks surface. We need to be always on top of that, and so we have to have an ongoing process, taking on board new attacks as they come out, making sure our users are aware of it, they can recognize what it is and deal with it appropriately. So we're up to the questions and answers section. Do we have any more questions there, Nick?
That was great, Andy. That was superb, very, very insightful. Yes, I have got a couple of questions from the audience. First one, this is interesting. I guess this is all around data protection and GDPR. Someone's asking, is there anything specific I need to consider if I've got staff that are working from home using personal or sensitive personal data?
Oh, absolutely. And the first thing you need to do there is a DPIA, a data privacy impact assessment, because the processing environment for that data has changed. So you need to do a DPIA to identify what the risks are to that data, and whether or not any additional mitigating factors or controls need to be introduced to re-establish the privacy of that data and secure it as it was in its initial processing environment. And that needs to be done for any of the processing that involves personal or sensitive personal information.
Right, and that's a legal obligation, is it, to comply with Data Protection Act and GDPR?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
it's a requirement for any new processes and any substantial changes to existing processes.
Okay, that's great. We have one more question. What is the minimum number of KPIs that a company should be collecting on their staff, or their staff, or connected with staff awareness and training?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends very much on the nature of the training and the awareness program you're delivering. Some of them are very focused on very specific things like phishing. So the number of KPIs there, I'd say minimum would be about 3, but each of the KPIs has to be easily measurable. So some things will be out of order, won't be available in that, but they need to be easily measurable and have some relevance to the exercise that you're undertaking. But I'd say 3 is generally a roundabout number minimum.
Right. Okay, brilliant. That's it. That's just a couple of questions that we've had from our audience. So Andy, you've obviously answered a lot of them along the way through your presentation. So okay, that's it, guys. That's the end of the presentation. Andy, could you just bump forward to the next slide? Thank you. So yeah, listen, guys, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I hope you've got some interesting nuggets of information and advice from primarily from Andy and myself as well. We're very, very customer focused. You can see our contact details on the screen there. We'll send you copies of these slides shortly, but please, if you've got any questions, if you need any help and advice, we're more than willing, Andy or myself are more than willing to have a chat with you. We'd be delighted to share some of our experience with you. I mentioned in my introduction that one of our core services is our education and awareness training. We've got a full portfolio of materials. If you need any pricing or a whistle-stop tour of the type of materials we've got, I'd be delighted to give you a quick demo. So yeah, that's it for us. Thanks again. We would like to capture a KPI from this webinar. So could I ask you all, just, it's not 2 minutes, it's about 30 seconds after this webinar shuts down. There's I think it's a 5-question survey just to get your feedback on how you enjoyed and how useful you found this seminar. So thanks again, Andy, for your time. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next webinar. Cheerio.
Bye.